of the webinars this week. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Pierre Lapointe. I'm the Customer Care Manager for Nextbee. And I have together with me Dennis Clark, who is our Product Manager for DejaCode.
Good morning, everyone.
So the goal for today is to tell you a bit about Nextbee, what's the problem we're trying to address, present you our offering briefly, and then we'll dive into the demo of DejaCode and see how you can manage open source compliance with DejaCode and the features that we have to help you with that. So Nextbee is based in California. Our focus is to help our customer manage their open source and third-party software, and to help them apply and comply with all the licensing obligation associated with the use of third-party software. We have a few solutions to help our customer with that. A product called DejaCode, that's the main focus for today. We also offer open source software audit services, and we have also open source tools to help you scan code and help you with generating attribution for your open source software. We are software provenance analysis expert. We've audited more than 450 products to date, and we are active open source developers, and we are a member of the Linux Foundation. So the problem we're trying to address today is to help our customer manage their software component data. Today we see that most companies are producing software and consuming it extensively. So to address that, we help them organizing and sharing this information within the enterprise. Most of our customers that we see today, most of the prospects that we see today, unfortunately use spreadsheets and complicated email workflow to manage that, and to help their engineer make sure they comply with open source software obligation, and that's really not an ideal solution. And so we are trying to address this problem with several solutions. DejaCode, which is our system of records and workflow solution for open source and third-party software use. About Code, which is one of our open source projects to help people generate attribution for their software, third-party software, and Scan Code, which is our open source code scanner. So these three solutions are addressed to different primary users. Today, the focus of this call is DejaCode, which is geared toward product release manager, OSRB members, and legal advisor within the enterprise. The goal of DejaCode is to organize and share all your product inventory and manage open source software compliance. We have several features that helps you to do that, and Dennis will show them to you in a minute. DejaCode is a SaaS solution, web-based. We also have an on-premises options, and it's an easy-to-use GUI for navigating and helping your company comply with open source software obligation. It's made of three main modules. The first one is the product portfolio, which is where you record all the software components that are within your software product. That's where you can track and report what's inside your product, and that's where you can comply with obligation by generating documentation for attribution with open source software product. The two other modules are the component catalog and the license library. This is where you can apply policies and establish workflows for the use of certain third-party components, and where you can publish policies company-wide on software licenses for your engineer to follow. Associated with the three main modules, we have other feature including a reporting engine, a policy feature, and also a workflow request feature that allows you to establish simple ways for your engineers to follow the guideline within your product, within your company. Today, DejaCode is available for trial, and we encourage company to subscribe to it and do a 30 days enterprise trial where they can, where we can help you publish your data in DejaCode for your own usage in a private database, so you can get a feel for it. Our subscription options are based on the number of products and the number of users that you're gonna have, and it starts at $500 a month. There's a personal edition to view DejaCode component and license data that's available on enterprise.dejacode.com, and we'll send you the material after this webinar for you to be able to start and try it out. This is the gist of it, the main modules. I don't want to spend too much time on PowerPoint. You're here to see the product and what you can do. Keep in mind that today DejaCode is available to help you publish policies, establish workflows around your open source and third-party component usage within your enterprise. And it's already a big step from spreadsheets and emails that we see today with our prospect. So without further ado, I'm going to give Dennis the screen, and he'll be able to show you what you can do with DejaCode today and how it can help you manage compliance within your company. Take it away, Dennis.
Thanks, Pierre. Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to have this opportunity to show you our product, and I will try to show you all the major and important features. Along the way, if you have questions, please log them in the chat, and Pierre will clue me in, and I will do my best to answer them. And so we're going to take this from the foundation, basically, of the product up. We're going to start with the license library. The license library is the easiest part of the application for you to actually roll out to your users and implement, because we provide all the data. NextBee has collected, at this point, 966 licenses that are very, very commonly used in the open source and free proprietary world, as well as a few others that we frequently run across in our audit business. And we have done a lot to provide extra information about them to help people understand those licenses. And we give you the opportunity to determine how you want to present that information to your users, and most importantly, how to indicate and communicate your policy to your users. So we're looking at an imaginary company called Starship Enterprise, because when we provide the data to you, we provide what we call NextBee reference data, but we immediately copy that to your own reference, your own private data space, as we call it, so that you can add your own information about that. You see, for instance, this column here, usage policy, this is your data. This is what you do. You decide, because you are the legal minds out there, and we are the software suppliers, to decide whether it's okay to use a license in your company. And I'll show you more about that momentarily. Just wanted to give you a layout of the basic application. We categorize our licenses, as you can see here, and these are the primary kinds of categories you'll come across, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with these terms. And we allow you, for instance, to restrict the view to just one of those if you like. And a user can also check for other things. One of the things we do is support the SPDX, the Linux Foundation Software Package Data Exchange format, and our license library is cross-referenced to the SPDX official license list. And so we have information about that in each one of our licenses. So that information is there. Now, what you're seeing here is, again, a personalized version of what columns you want to see. These are things that you can control. We have a whole bunch of things we call license tags, which I'll show you, and there are 3 prominent ones that we show here, so that people know right away whether something might be interesting or important. So, for instance, we do have a bunch of licenses that that Starship Enterprise has decided aren't particularly business friendly, and they'd rather not use them. And a very obvious reason might be that the license says non-commercial use only. That's kind of an obvious one. And so you want to tell your users right away that if something's under that license, it's a no-no. And they can get more information about it. But basically, you've told them, no, can't use it, and here's why. And these are things that you can provide. I'll go into more detail about these in just a moment. So that gives you some idea of what the overall presentation of the licenses are. So if I'm, for instance, a conscientious engineer or product developer in your organization, I could go and just look for a particular license that I've seen on a component that I'd like to use, and I can find out if maybe I'd like to, if it's okay for me to use that. And I'll get some interesting information here about licenses in that general area. And so right away, I will find out that the company has decided that we don't care for some of the patent language in that license. The license might be okay for someone else, but not for our company, and here's why. And so if I were to look at the license requirements, I can see that. We have all of those here. And I can get a very good idea of what that license is about. But it also basically is telling me that, no, I'm going to have to look elsewhere to use that in my company. On the other hand, on a positive note, we have the ability to say that there are licenses that are already pre-approved. So if I come across, and this is a very common license, the BSD modified, or another common one, of course, is MIT, I know right away that my company is okay with my using that component. And that this is what the license is about, gives me some more information about it. Here's the standard text, and here are the requirements. And if I want to know, well, where did that requirement come from? How do I know that? I can click on one of these little tags, and it'll take me right here, and it'll show me that redistribution of source code must retain the above copyright notice. In other words, don't take the notice out of the program. As auditors, we unfortunately come across all too many cases where people don't follow directions. And so this is one way of communicating that to software developers in your organization, that if you're going to use open source, please follow the obligations. And so we have this information that's right there for them to see. If they want more information, although this is pretty thorough, they can take another look at various URLs that are out there. They can find out more information about whose license this is. The SPDX information is here. They can read about it on Wikipedia. And so here is our usage policy. Generally only require attribution. In other words, you've got to give credit for it in your product, that you're using that component. And so this, by the way, this guideline is something that you write. We provide samples, and this is a sample. And this is something that you decide. Approved license. We came up with 3 categories, green, yellow, red, for obvious reasons. It's quick and tells someone right away. The green means go ahead. The yellow means, well, there may be some things that we want to do first. And red means probably not. And so we have those, and we have help on all of that. But you actually can provide the guidelines in detail for each of these, and you can have more than 3. You can have as many as you like for your usage policies. And we're going to see more about that when we get to components as well. Right now we're down basically at the license library level, which is a list of all the licenses that you're likely to find out in the free software world and in some of the proprietary world. Just to give you a bit more idea about the depth and breadth of what we have and some of the aspects of this license list. Let's go ahead, and I had that filtered. Let's do that again. So, as you might expect, quite a few of the licenses that are associated with Oracle software require some kind of review. And there are a number of reasons for that. Some of them simply might not work for you at all. And some of them might have restrictions that you want to make sure that your developers know about. We, in our auditing practice, frequently run across software from the SDK that was originally produced by Sun and now, of course, is owned by Oracle. So, for example, if we were to take a look at this one, this is a restricted license, and this guidance, we provide what we call a sample or typical guidance that you might have, is something that you can write even more. Your organization may be okay with this particular license because everything you do might be for general purpose desktop computers. But if you have anything to do with phones or tablets or routers or anything like that, and you probably do, this might not be the right license for you. So we have that information right there in front to tell your users. And in the license requirements, you'll see that there are a lot more restrictions. This is not an open source license, of course. There are way too many restrictions. It's free software, but can you actually use it in your business is the real question. And that's one of the things that we provide some information about. It is, of course, up to you to decide in your own legal analysis of every license of what your final decision about that is. But we provide the kind of information that people need to know quickly going in and to evaluate whether they want to use a piece of software or not. So, for instance, we take you right to the interesting section about this license being restricted to general purpose desktop computers and servers. So if you're using it on anything else, you got to call Oracle and or not use it. So that's some of the information you can get there, and this is one of the ways you can provide that information right away to your users. So again, there are general guidelines here about this usage policy, but you can also provide additional guidance here for that specific license. We also have the ability to put a URL right underneath that. And if you have a web page in your company that talks about specific kinds of licenses and the procedures that people must follow, you can have that here, and the user can hop right to that as well. So that information is all there for you to provide your users. Now, let's dig in just a little bit more on this. I want to emphasize again that NextB provides what we call reference data to you that is the result of our analysis of each one of these licenses. And we've grouped them in what we call obligations, things you must do, restrictions, things you cannot or should not do, policies, things that have some relationship to a company policy, and maybe there might be some concern, and then we have basic information about that. One of the more common ones that's becoming more and more important, of course, is network redistribution. Just putting it on a website is considered distributing the software for some licenses. It means that right away the terms of that license apply to anything of yours that applies to that license. So we have this information here, and it's important for you to know that the grouping, the order, everything here is completely configurable by you when you get our version of the product, and but it still preserves the data that we have. It's something that you can add on. So for instance, suppose you wanted to add a tag, and actually we have some assigned to some of the licenses, not all of them, called internal use only. In other words, this license is fine as long as you only use it internally. You could assign that. You could make it. You could sort it so that it goes to the top. You could even put it on the page I showed you as one of the columns, so that right away your developers know, well, GPL 3.0 might not be good to put in my product, but if it's something I'm using just for testing or building, maybe it's okay. So for internal use only, that might be all right. And so you can add that if you want. And again, that's a policy decision you're making about whether someone can use something in-house but not actually use it in one of the products that you release to the public. So that's something you can do. All of these obligations, restrictions, policies, and information, the text that's with them are things that you can modify and or customize to fit your own specific way of looking at the world. I should emphasize again that these usage policies that we have assigned here are a reference for the purpose of this demo and for you to understand what they might look like. There are a lot of different opinions on some of these licenses, and one interesting case for me in particular is the Apache 2.0 license. Almost everyone, well, I haven't done a complete survey, but quite a few of the organizations we talk to consider this license to be just fine. But there are, depending on the kind of product that you produce, you might find that the patent language in the license doesn't quite work for you. And so you might want to reconsider that for your company. And so we have it here as an approved license, ready to go. But in your organization, maybe that's not the case. So that's a situation to consider. So the usage policy is something that you decide on, as well as those guidance and guidance URL fields I talked about. Those are all for you. And what you think is important for your users to see is also something that you can configure. We're not going to go into every configuration how-to today. I want to give you an overview of the whole product, but just please be aware that what you're seeing here can change dramatically from customer to customer. Okay, let's take a look at the component catalog. Now, these are and Nextbee actually has nearly 300,000 components in its component catalog. For the purpose of this demo, we're showing a reasonable subset just to make it easier for us to get an idea of what's going on. But we essentially have gone through and vetted and categorized and added metadata to components that are freely available on the internet. That's the purpose of the component catalog. And for you to communicate to your users what your policy is regarding those. Now, you'll notice that we've got 4 categories here, mainly just to illustrate that it's up to you what kind of usage policies you want to have. And so we have this little thumbs up here icon for, hey, go ahead and use it. This we don't even need to review it. Just use it. It's recommended. Use it. Go right ahead. with others, we still might want to make sure that you're following your obligations if you're going to use this in your product. And with some of them, we really do want to make sure that you are following the rules. And some of them might require legal review. So for instance, we could have had another usage policy here that specifically indicates that we need the legal department to look at it, not just the open source review board, to make sure you're following your obligations and restrictions. There may be something about a license that, and the way you're using it in your product, that really needs legal review. And so we have that information there. We also have some very useful information about components in different versions. So for instance, as you can see, the iText component, which is freely available, has an interesting history of licenses. It's really changed over time. The 217, which is the one that frequently ships with versions of Eclipse, is under a choice of MPL 1.1 or LGPL 2.0. And a lot of people think that license is just fine. And if you do, then you're okay with people using iText in your company. On the other hand, the more recent versions of iText use the AGPL license, which is not so cool. And let's take a look at that. So here we have another case of a component with metadata that we've provided you, but we also give you the ability to put policy about that. Now, as you use DejaCode and as you use it over time, and as people ask you, is it okay for me to use this component? This is an opportunity for you to record the analysis that you have done and to have it available for other people who also might be interested in that same component in your organization. So for any given component, we have that kind of information. We have the notice that's provided with it to make it clearly, well, where did you get this license information, and whose component is this, etc. And we have who the current owner is, and more information about how to contact them. The license, as you can see, this is what we call a disjunctive license. It's either AGPL 3.0 or commercial. And of course, if it's commercial, it might be okay. So if you have the money, you can use this particular, if you want the features of the latest version of iText, that might work for your organization. And it's up to you to communicate that to your engineers. We show whether it's used somewhere, and we're going to look at that very shortly because I want to show you our product portfolio. And we have information about if I wanted to download that, where would I get it? And we also have that, of course, for the earlier version on NPL 1.1. So this information is there, and we have the usage policy on that component. And as you can see, we suggest alternative terms. Now, here is where, I don't want to take us too far down this particular side path, but the components within our component catalog and the licenses are all subject to the possibility of people to enter requests about them. They can enter requests right into the system. I'm sure you have forms in your company or the companies that you advise that people use for this purpose. And so we have a completely and totally configurable ability to create what we call request templates in our application. And that's what the administrator does. Once you've done that, you've got a form that someone can use to fill in. And so you might have a form that looks something like this. It's got different questions that it asks people about that and wants to know why do you want to use this component? How are you going to use it? Are you going to modify it? Or are you going to do this or that? And we ask those questions. What's the context? Do you really need this component? And there's an ability to put attachments. There's an ability to have more comments. Anyone who's got the security can go ahead and comment on this request, and it gives you a record of it. And if you make it what we call a public request, other people can see that that request occurred, and they can see that a similar thing happened already. And so you have a record now of requests for use of that component, and it's all integrated within the application where you publish your policies. We'll look more at these other interesting links in a moment. But that is the major aspect, I think, of the component catalog that you might want to know about. Just to illustrate the possibility that you can go from fairly complex to simple components, let's go ahead and look at a fairly recently popular one called Qt, sometimes pronounced Qt, and it is one that we have in here. And not only do we have this component, which is this huge library of things that, as you can see here, and it's described here. We have the notice, and the notice tells you about all the fascinating licensing options, some information about the current owner. It's moved around a bit, and some information about the 4 licenses. And what we provide here is the ability to evaluate which license is the best one for you. And so there's information. We've already gotten an idea about what we call our license tags. They're all here, and you can see which ones are really complicated. And we have some information about how the licenses apply. And we have that gives people an idea of what I need to do. And so there, you might have, for instance, some guidance on that. And this is on this specific component. And work with the legal department to determine the correct license for how you're going to use it, essentially is what they're saying. Even though chances are you're probably going to pick this one, the first one, because that one's the one that would probably work if you use the component correctly within a commercial product. So we also have information about the various components within Qt, and you might actually be using only part of it, and we have a different view of it here, if you like, and we're going to see more about that in a moment when we look at the product portfolio. We have information again about the package, how you get it, and your usage policy on that. But just to give you an idea of the capabilities of the application, that we can go from here to say one of the components main subcomponents of Qt is called core, and it in turn has a whole bunch of other interesting ones, and some of them are actually under like BSD or MIT, and so those are not of any particular concern. If you saw any little red buttons in here, you might be. So if there were a GPL 3.0 snuck in there, you'd want to know that. You'd want to know that it was part of this, and you'd want to make sure that either you use it internally, or we know exactly how we're using it, or you don't use it. And you'd want to review that before people use this component in their application. So that's gives you a quick tour of the component catalog. Now, if we hop over to our product portfolio, I can show you a few things. This is an example product. It's actually, to be honest with you, it's a grab bag of things we put into this one product just to illustrate the kinds of things that can be in a product that you might actually ship. But again, it's imaginary. But this is your product, which isn't imaginary, of course. And here's where you would put you would assign your components that you're actually going to use. Anything third party or anything really interesting that you want to make sure you're keeping track of, you would put that in your product portfolio. And here's the notice that we came up with for this, and the owner, of course, and the license. It's under a commercial license, and a hierarchy that illustrates what's going on. And we have over here, in somewhat more detail, some information about the components that are in that product. And I'm going to focus on this just bit more shortly after I show you all the different tabs, how we deliver it, and here you might have a request on that. We're going to look at that request momentarily, and the usage policy. Now, one of the things that you want to know when you've put a product into our product portfolio is, have we looked at everything that's in it? Do you know what's in your code? Do you know that? And have you checked out and examined the use that your team has made of these components? And do you approve them or not? And so we can see here that we have some components with nothing in the little status column. We have some that are approved, and we have some that we've indicated require legal review. And so there are a number of ways to deal with that. We have a little button that you, with the right security, can go and take a look and go into the administrative side of our application and start dealing with those and looking at each one. And you can see how it's used, and you can take care of little things like the what we call the usage policy on that item. And if it requires more notes or requires more information, you can indicate that. Now, this particular product portfolio has a request on it that someone has entered. Again, what you're looking at here is an example of the kind of request template that you can use in your implementation of DejaCode, because I'm sure you all have seen and or used and or possibly written the forms that people use to get approval. And this is an overall one, just for the entire product and for all the subcomponents in it. And as someone looking at that, I can go right to that. I can view the subcomponents, which is what we were just looking at. The user who put the request in can see this at any time to see how things are going. And if the user has concerns, they can put in more comments. If they want to attach a file to show whether they got approval or not, or a diagram of how they're using it, things like that, they can do that here. So all that information is available. So suppose you need an architecture diagram. You can have that here, right here on this request. And so all that information is here. Every time I do an update or submit a new request, it emails me, the requester, and it sends an email to the assignee, the current assignee. And that assignee is something that I originally chose or was defaulted, depending on how you want to set that up. And so it can move from person to person, and then you can set up different assignees as you go through. And those little things means that they can be edited and so forth. So that gives you some idea of our product portfolio. But let me show you what's a very significant payback that you will get from this application once you've got your product here and once you know what's going on, and that is that you can generate attribution. We give you the ability to filter down what you want to see on the attribution document by using a query that says, maybe I don't need to put on my attribution doc the things that I'm using for testing or the things I'm using for build or whatever, depending on your policy. So let's just put a little query on that, and that'll filter a few of those guys out. And now we're going to generate attribution. And here it is. Again, of course, as you've heard me say over and over again, this is all configurable, all right, and what you see up here. And so what we've done is generate an HTML file. This is the kind of thing you'll see in a lot of open source products that are out there now, that such as Firefox, that have a commitment to communicating exactly what's in the product in a way that's friendly and easy for people to get through. And so this shows the different software components that are in the product, and it shows there's also a list of all the licenses, the common licenses that are in it as well. Quite a list, as you can see, because I have Qt Core in there, and Qt Core, of course, has a whole bunch of things under it. So if I were to just jump to any one of these, Here, I'm indicating to the world, well, you know, this might be under GPL, but we have a commercial license for it. Okay, so, and if I am using that, this is simple. It's under Apache 2.0. And this one's under BSD Simplified. And as you can see, I can hop around and quite easily and see everything that's involved in this particular license. I mean, in this product and all the licenses and components that are there. And that is part of the value I get out of attaching them to the product with their licenses and my comments about them in DejaCode. Oops, I meant to take us back to the top. Anyway, there we are. So that's our attribution, which you can save as an HTML file and then print and edit if you want to just make a few changes to it. And as I mentioned, when you actually generate it, you have the choice of using our query tool, which we're about to talk about, to do even more. Somewhere on here, yes, here we are, reports. Your users, when they're logged in, will have access to the reports that you've decided they can get to, and will have access to the parameters for each of those reports that you've decided they can modify. Very configurable, very controllable. It's the kind of report that you can use to, for a number of purposes. One might be just to, for instance, get a good idea of, in case you're interested in SPDX, of all the DejaCode license, library licenses, and get a nice overview of that. And you can export this to a spreadsheet. You can export it, in fact, to a whole bunch of things. A Word doc. This is good for a report that you basically just want to view, HTML. JSON, if you want to do any programming with it. XLS or YAML, which is a basic text format. You can do that for any of our reports, and it's a great way to get data out of the system. A report is essentially a combination of a query that you can do and what we call a column template, where you have the labels that you want. And you don't have to know SQL. You don't have to know. You don't have to know our data model. Our query and column template and report tools guide you along to, in a very, just for a super user kind of way, to create the reports that you need. For instance, I could just want to see the licenses that I've been updating lately, and actually been doing a lot of work on them. So you can check to see. You can get that kind of activity on both your licenses and your components and your products. You can have reports that run on those. And again, you can determine which ones are available to your general users. And you can determine which ones you want to just use for your administrative purposes. And that's all. So we provide, again, sample reports and things that we find useful. I certainly do in my day-to-day work with our license library and component catalog. And that's one of the reasons you see some of these reports here, because I want to know what's going on and is there some particular area that I need to analyze. And again, one of the values is that I can export the information to another place. Okay, I think I have run through all the basics, and Pierre is going to tell me now if any questions have arisen. So Pierre.
Yes, there was a question about how the catalog is imported, which I replied in the chat already, but I wanted to tell everybody that we usually quarterly update the data in DejaCode by adding more licenses, more components. But a main thing is that at the beginning of the subscription, if you already have existing software inventories, we can work with you to import them within the system. So you start with also, on top of Nextbit data, you start also with your own data. We have this component import feature that Dennis is showing to us. and this is a great way to make sure you start from a solid base within your data. So we do also that for trials, enterprise trial, by the way, to make sure you work with relevant data and your own product. That was the only question so far. If anybody else has a question, I invite them to post them in the chat. Denis is showing you the admin part of the application. This is where what we would call the data guardian configures the system and handles the request and make sure that everybody has the right access to the administration. As we said, the request templates are highly customizable. You can create your own. Just like with the component import, NextB can work with you to set up your request templates at the beginning of your trial or your subscription.
Yes, in fact, we welcome the opportunity to see the kinds of forms that you've worked with or produced, and so that we can show you what they look like in DejaCode. And most people are pretty happy with the results. It's especially because it puts it in basically, if it's a spreadsheet, now you've got it in a web-based application. And so you've got a database of these requests, and you've got it connected with your email system, and you've got an easy way for people to check on the status of a request and so forth. And so you've suddenly galvanized and supersized your request system to be able to work within DejaCode. Again, you can associate them with licenses and components. It was not something I actually demonstrated earlier, but it's pretty simple. When I'm actually in there, I can, I can, yeah, push the right button. I can use any of these to get my request in and associate it with that component that's already in the catalog. If you can also use the request for things that aren't in the catalog yet. So I've come across something, I don't see it, and I can ask people about it and give them the where to find it and information like that, and you can take that and run with it. You can check to see if it's in the NextB reference catalog and simply copy it over, and that's easily done. Or you can go ahead and add the component yourself. So you either put them in manually, as someone asked, or you can import them from any spreadsheets or whatever kind of data sources that you have that you can convert to CSV format, which is what we currently support.
Dennis, we have a question about our product roadmap. Do we publish a product roadmap for upcoming features?
Well, within a few...
The answer is that we don't
Sometimes.
at the moment, but we do publish newsletter regularly with what we're working on and the new features that are added to DejaCode. Also, we're interested in if you have a specific set of features you'd like to see in DejaCode, we are willing to work with you to see how, if they are already in our private roadmap, and see if we can integrate them in our product roadmap. Denis is showing you the DejaCode support. That's also a great way to ask if we're working on a feature or not, and to publish any bugs or any issues that you may encounter with the system. I hope it replies to your question.
We use it quite heavily. Our customers have been giving us lots of ideas on what's the most important thing to do to improve the product, and this ticketing system here has been very helpful to keep track of that and to help keep people notified on what we're doing. So that is available too.
We have a question for John about trace code. Denis, you want to take a crack at it, or should I try?
Trace code?
Yes.
Why don't you do that, Pierre?
So, John, trace code is our tool that we use at the moment for software audits to help us map what code is deployed from a development code base during a software audit. Because what we've seen and what is most relevant when you do a software analysis is to look at what is actually deployed to your customer, because that's when most of the software licenses obligation triggers. This is not really the topic of today's webinar, but John, I will be contacting you to and put you in touch with Philip, our CTO, who is heavily invested in TraceCode. We don't have a date as of now as when we're gonna publish it, but it's yes, as you say, it seems key to the audit. That's right, and that's what that's part of what Nextbee offers as during the software audit services. And I'll be following up with you on that topic very shortly. Any other question from the audience? All right, doesn't look like it. I'm.
Oh, well, I should have prepared a scan code and about code demo too, but I didn't.
To all, I published again all our links, the pricing for DejaCode, how you can get a trial and access to our personal edition if you want to play with to use the application in a view-only mode. We will be having